This is Jarrod Horak, and in this video I will discuss the possibility of a wet track for the 2025 Kentucky Derby. And there is a thunderstorm watch for the Louisville, Kentucky area until 9 p.m. Oaks night, and the Derby Saturday forecast calls for a 55% chance of rain for much of the day with a high temperature of 62. So far in Louisville, they've dodged most of the forecasted rain this week. And if you're interested in my annual Triple Crown Series full cards, you'll find them at the runawayrhorse.com on my shop page. I completed my Kentucky Oaks and Derby Day full cards earlier this week, and later this spring I will be covering Black-Eyed Susan Day and Preakness Day full cards at Pimlico, May 16th and 17th, and multiple Belmont Stakes Week full cards at Saratoga, including Belmont Stakes Day Saturday, June 7th. And the Kentucky Oaks card is still in progress today, and my full card highlights through the first 8 races are on the screen now. I'm having some good success early on in the card. So go to the runawayrhorse.com on my shop page if you're interested in my Triple Crown season products, and I will include a link to my shop page in the video description below. I've been offering my Triple Crown season products since the late 1990s, and I've had a lot of success over the years, and I have a lot of experience with these Triple Crown Series full cards. And I'm off to a good start this year with multiple Oaks Day winners, including Raging Sea and the Grade 1 La Troine, my Churchill Downs price play, paying at 4-1. Now we're going to look at the possibility of a wet track. And for the wet track, having experience over a wet track can help, but all wet tracks are different. So, for instance, a wet track at Keeneland doesn't necessarily play the same as a wet track at Churchill. And the bloodlines can help, and we will look at the pedigrees of the horses as well to see if they have any pedigree breeding. Now, overall, I think some horses, they'll just hate the mud. A few are going to love it. Others really won't care one way or the other. And we'll have to see if it does rain. The Churchill surface does dry out quickly, so we'll see if that is the case as well. So there are some horses in the Derby with a wet track win: Neoequos, American Promise, Luxor Cafe, and Coal Battle. And we'll talk about some of those wet track wins, but we're going to pull up some of the Brisnet off-track numbers. That's the racing form that I'm looking at, and they have a number that they assign horses for a fast track and for a wet track. The higher the number, the better. And Tiztastic has a 114, so he's got the best one. Behind him, Journalism, Owen Almighty, and Sandman and Sovereignty, they all have 113, and Citizen Bull has a 112. The sire win percentage for the wet tracks: Chunk of Gold sire, 23% wins. Then you have Owen Almighty sire at 21%, American Promise at 20%, along with Burnham Square and Final Gambit, Tiztastic at 19%, and then we have Citizen Bull, Journalism, and Sovereignty at 18%, and then the Dam Sire win percentage for off-track: East Avenue, 20% for the Dam Sire, Citizen Bull, Owen Almighty, and Sandman at 18%, and then Coal Battle and Journalism sitting there at 18%. So now we'll look at some of the horses that had wet track experience before. Neoequos is one that he won on a wet track. It was in the slop at 6 furlongs against Florida Bread Company. Now, another thing you want to look at when you're looking at the wet track victories is, did they earn a speed rating that was much higher than their other ratings? And for Neoequos, that wasn't the case. He has run faster than that on a couple occasions, but he did handle it. He'll be forwardly placed, but I don't know that the 1.25 mile distance is really going to help him, because that's the other factor here. In a 20-horse field, it's not just that they handled a wet track. They may handle the wet track, but they just might not be able to go 1.25 miles. So we'll have to see what happens there. We do have a couple scratches in the Derby that allowed Baeza to get in. Rodriguez and Grande are both out, and I did update my ticket. So if you are purchasing my full cards, I did update my Derby tickets, taking Rodriguez and Grande out of all of my wagers. They weren't the horses that I picked up at the top, but they were involved in some of my suggested wagers, and I took those out and I updated those wagers. So if you get that full card, you will have the updated Derby wagers. And then also, if there are any more scratches prior to tomorrow morning for scratch time, I will also update my tickets if need be. Now, Luxor Cafe, he's run 4 times on a wet track in Japan with 3 wins and a runner-up finish. 3 of those were on a good track, and then in the mud, he was second by a neck. So he has handled a wet track. His sire, American Pharaoh, 17% mud sire. But the pedigree is not as important at this point, because he's already proven that he can handle a wet track. Now, Journalism, your favorite, he's got good breeding on the top and bottom. I was mentioning the sire and the dam sire, his sire Curlin at 18%, the dam sire Uncle Mo at 18%. Also, when you're looking at the BristNet ratings, what you want to see as well is if you have a horse that with the fast track rating and the off track rating, if the off track rating is better, they may move forward. If the off track and the fast track ratings are the same, typically they may handle the off track just as well. And that's the case with journalism. His fast track number for BristNet is a 113. His off track number also a 113. So for journalism, no reason why he wouldn't handle a wet track. Obviously, being from California, he hasn't really experienced it, but a lot of the horses in this field have not experienced a wet track before, and he does have the right running style. So if you like journalism, just stick with him. And in a lot of the cases on these horses, if you like a horse, probably stick with them anyway. And some other horses, looking at their wet track breeding, we'll come down the list to Tiztastic number 14, and he's one that his BristNet off-track rating is higher than his fast-track rating. He has a 114 for off-track, 113 for fast-track, and he does exit a win in the Louisiana Derby, and he's one that we know he's going to get the mile and a quarter. So based on the pedigree, promising wet track pedigree, he's a grade 2 winner at a mile and 3/16. He should be closing. He should get pace to chase, but he hasn't been training as well as his stablemate publisher heading into this event. But if you like Tiztastic, I'm not going to try to talk you off of him. Definitely, he could be a player. Now, a horse with a 2-for-2 record over a wet track is Coal Battle, and this one he did win in the slop, 5 furlongs at Evangeline Downs by more than 3 lengths. That was in a maiden special weight race, and then his other win was in the mud, the Jean Lafitte Stakes at Delta Downs at 6.5 furlongs, and he won that one nicely. Now, at that time, that Jean Lafitte was his fastest race, and then he started to get a little faster after that. His best speed rating, he peaked in the Rebel Stakes, and then he dropped off in the Arkansas Derby, which is a bit of a concern because the Rebel was a mile and a 16th, the Arkansas Derby was a mile and an 8th, and now he's got to go a mile and a quarter. But we know he handles a wet track. Very experienced horse. He should be very fit and ready to go a mile and a quarter. So those are the look at the main horses that have the wet track experience, and that'll do it for this video. And overall, like I said, if you're handicapping for this wet track, you might want to stick to the horses that you liked before. There aren't any horses that on paper that look like they just excel and even go faster on a wet track than they do on other footings. The key to the race is going to be the pace. How does it play out? The break, what kind of position the horses can get themselves in early, and the race flow, just all the regular handicapping factors. The wet track is one to consider, but not the only one. There are plenty of handicapping factors to consider when you're wagering on the Kentucky Derby. Don't forget to like, comment, and share these videos if you like them. Subscribe to my channel as well. It's free to subscribe. And until I see you next time, good luck at the races and good luck in the 2025 Kentucky Derby.